Okay, today we're going to take a look at field-based activity 4. In field-based activity, we decided to take a look at how to develop strategies for infusing global perspectives into the classroom, with particular emphasis on real-world application in the subject that prepares students for the global society. So, talking about that, we're looking into globalization in education. So, along with globalization in education, you first need to know what globalization is. When used to describe the growing integration of economics worldwide through increased in trade, investments, flows, and technology transfer. So, what is it all about? Well, globalization describes the interplay across cultures of macro-social forces. These forces include religion, political and economic. Globalization can erode and universalize the characteristics of a local group. So when we're looking at characteristics of the globalization that can be linked to the education, we look at educational terms, economic terms, which increase the economic interdependence of national economics across the world through a rapid increase in cross-border movement. You look there's cultural terms. When we look at aspects of globalization, you have your business, your technology, and your culture, and they all intertwine and intermix. So when we're looking at the core values and competencies for global education, well, the core values, we want peace and nonviolence, social justice, human rights, economics, well-being, and cultural integrity. And then when you look into core skills and competencies, we look at the self-worth and self-affirmation, affirmation in others, cultural and racial differences, critical thinking, effective communication skills, and nonviolent conflict resolution and mediation. When you have unsubstantial development, you have jobless and ruthless growth. You can see that that kind of goes to that unsubstantial development. Voiceless growth, ruthless growth, meaningful growth, and futureless growth. So all of those things, when we don't have the education and the curriculum to support our globalization in the classroom with future skills, we actually end up with a world with all of these unsubstantial developments. Some of the economic issues that we are facing are worldwide equality. We have consistency and quality of educational experiences remain patchy. Our secondary education in developing countries remain quite weak, and our new technologies of globalization. So without those things being developed and pursued, the future doesn't look as bright as it would knowing what globalization is. I took some time this week and talked to Mrs. Shank, and we discussed several different things about globalization and how we felt that it was incorporated into education. So here's the interview that I had with Mrs. Shank. I'm here with Mrs. Shank, and she is our counselor here at Wintersville Elementary, and we're going to talk about how technology has opened up doors and also the cons of technology with globalization in our classrooms and education. So, Mrs. Shank, with technology, what have you seen to be the pros in technology with globalization and how it's built collaboration and partnerships?
I think technology has had a tremendous impact on globalizing education, and in many ways it has been positive. I would say more positive than negative. The information can be shared much quicker between machines. You're also able to incorporate virtual learning, not only within the classroom to learn about different cultures of the world, but also in classrooms separately online. So you're able to have different various cultural professors from different areas of the world running a course, and you're thousands of miles away from them. So you're kind of immersed in that. I also think that it is faster paced, so things go a lot quicker. Information is obtained quicker, and communication amongst one another happens much faster rather than slowly. There's also, online assessments, the use of those, where globally we're able to compare different areas of education based on our online assessments to see where, advancements are, where areas of need are, which is important in the education world. It also ties in a lot with social media, which can be a positive thing, sharing the information with the community, with the public, with other communities and cultures, but I also think that's a negative as well.
Have you seen or, dealt with any of the negative social media within, like, talking with kids or teachers?
Not a ton at this grade level. Working with preschool through fourth grade, there's not a great deal. We see more of parents communicating and going to social media and talking amongst themselves or putting information out there before reaching out to the school. Taking that line of communication first. So that can be a little disheartening to deal with. So I would say that's a negative, but not so much with students. I don't know if I've ever dealt with online amongst the students at this age level.
Okay. All right. Anything else you would like to share?
Not really. I think, especially in my role, technology has been a wonderful thing to incorporate. Also as a teacher, our students are constantly, and I think we spoke about this before, constantly stimulated by technology, TVs, video games, YouTube, on computers 24/7. So the use of it in the classrooms not only helps in that way, but also to see what other cultures are doing, to compare amongst. So we're learning things from different areas.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, that was my interview with Mrs. Shank. And as you can see, one of the important things that she had stated, one of the strategies that are definitely used to connect students with the global society around is technology and definitely social media. One of the things that I have actually seen work is VIP Kid. So with that, I don't know if anyone's familiar with that, but we're going to go there next and explain how that is one of the strategies used to connect the Chinese world to the American culture. Okay, here is actually one of those ways to connect different cultures and the language barrier and help with future jobs, different things like that. One of the programs is VIP Kid, and here is a picture and an example of a classroom. Basically, teachers from the United States apply to educate children from overseas to speak English. So what happens is it's a virtual lesson plan that's already established for you, and you can see on the left-hand side of the screen where it says Meg and Mike in the USA. That is where the teacher and the student are both following along with the technology and the lesson plan. You can see the teacher is waiting for a student to arrive, where that little kind of picture of person is. A person will show up there and then they will teach. So it's kind of like Skype and virtual learning. So it's a great way to connect two different cultures and help share the language that most haven't had the opportunity to learn yet. So VIP Kid is one of those ways that technology has connected two different cultures, and it's a great way to have more connection in the future. Look at the impact of globalization on education, a challenge and an opportunity. So in looking at that, globalization and its impact on education, we definitely have room for a lot of needs, and it needed reforms within the educational system. The fallout of globalization And what are these needs for reforms in education? Well, when we're looking at it, we're talking about the curriculum and the graduation. Basically, productivity and how we're delivering that throughout, and the instruments that we're using to prepare students who can complete world activities, being productive members of society. So you see some fallout of globalization, internationalization of education, finance-related issues, secondary and higher education, and some of the impact it will mean, or more competitive and educational systems with more pressure on it to assure that the next generation of workers are prepared for some of the jobs that are coming out in the 21st century. So basically, that's all. With globalization, we definitely have access to more connection now and collaboration with other cultures throughout the world, and that is due to technology. So hopefully it continues to grow, and we see that we're preparing our students for their future jobs.